Welcome to Daily Sports. This is episode 14. Make sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And then you can watch the full podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We're not going to mess around. We're going to get right into it. TCU, Georgia. Georgia comes out on top. Let me just say something. To all you bums out there, right? All you bums, commenting on our Instagram, on our YouTube, on our TikTok, commenting, writing TCU off even though they beat Michigan, writing TCU off even though Max Duggan was a Heisman finalist, Heisman runner-up. TCU are going to keep it within 1 score, 2 scores of Georgia. All this. Where y'all at, bro? Y'all not in my comment section anymore. So where'd you go? Because I haven't heard anything. I genuinely haven't heard anything. And TCU on Monday, I didn't hear anything from them either. And genuinely. And I would just like to point out, where I work, I was able to see the TCU band and the Georgia band. You will not believe the amount of TCU band members that I spoke to who were so confident in their team not only winning, but winning by a good margin. You would not believe. And for them to show up at SoFi Stadium to only score a touchdown in the first quarter is abysmal. Let me say this now, and let me make this absolutely clear. This game was the worst college football playoff game in history. That includes the BCS era, and that includes the CFP era. I'm talking all the finals, I'm talking all the semifinals, and I'm talking all the BCS championship games. This was the worst game by far, and it shows. It was the least watched on TV. I was looking at the rankings, and guess what was number 1? Oregon, Ohio State, because that was the first one. And Oregon got blown out by 20, but people were watching because it was still a good game, and Oregon could score more than 7 points. Speaking of Oregon, TCU making them look real good right now, because not only did Georgia score more than 49 points against TCU, but TCU, again, was only held to 1 score like Oregon was at the beginning of the year. So when are we going to start talking about that? Because what I'm seeing, rightfully so, I'm seeing TCU out of the top 10, hell, should be out of the top 25. They should go nowhere near it. I don't want to hear any Max Duggan conversations because he shouldn't even have been in Heisman conversation at all. I have yet to see something from him that makes me go, yes, he deserves to be the Heisman runner-up behind Caleb Williams. I've seen Caleb Williams play live, and that man is a freak. He knows where to put the ball. He knows where to run. He knows where the holes are. No, I've actually seen him 3 times. That's my mistake. But I don't want to hear anything about TCU. I don't want to hear anything about that goddamn Hypnotoad. And I don't want to hear anything about Max Duggan either, because I am so sick and tired. The amount of times that I saw the TCU logo on Monday and the amount of times I was pissed off by that, I just couldn't. I couldn't take it anymore. And to watch Stetson Bennett, 25-year-old Stetson Bennett, go up and down the field at least 6 or 7 times, at least, because I don't even know how many touchdowns they scored. They scored on 10 of 11 drives in the 4th quarter. They only missed once. TCU scored once. That was
watching
it.
The game, bro. I'm not even gonna lie.
Everyone did. I ended up playing a board game.
Yeah, dude.
It's a
really
college football
Yeah.
championship game. These are supposed to be the 2 best teams in the nation. And I've been saying it. I've been saying it for a month now. TCU is not one of the best teams in the nation. I can name 7 other teams at least that are better than TCU and that would have put up a better matchup against Georgia than the abysmal performance they put up on Monday. That was atrocious. I've never wanted to gouge my eyes out so badly watching college football before. And I've seen Oregon choke some horrible games. Never against TCU too. So I'm getting my revenge game up, God forbid. But all you TCU fans out there and all those people in the comment section talking all this about TCU, talking all this about Max Duggan and the power of the Hypnotoad, I don't ever want to see you in my comment section ever again. Ever. I don't want to be face to face with you. I don't ever want to hold a conversation because you clearly do not know what you are talking about. And I'm not saying I know what I'm talking about either. I'm just saying that what I said and the amount of feedback I got from what I said about TCU Michigan and before heading into TCU Georgia, all the feedback that I was getting about, oh, the guy on top is pretty stupid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Da, 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 da. Now where are we? 65-7 is where we are. 65-7. The over-under was 62 points. Georgia covered that alone. They scored 65.
Dude.
And TCU were expected to keep it within 12 points. They were way past 12 points by the second half. It was what, 21 to 7?
No. Okay,
24 to 7?
It was Georgia was minus 13, right? They were at minus 13 within like 3 minutes into the second quarter, and then they just kept extending the lead, dude. It was okay. So I thought at the beginning of the year when Georgia absolutely annihilated Oregon,
Yeah.
that was a bad performance, right? I genuinely thought that was the worst performance we'd see all year by a top level team, right?
I agree. I'm
And
an Oregon fan.
49-3. I'm like, this is pathetic. I mean, this is a joke. I'm a UCLA fan. I thought UCLA could do better than that. I'm not saying that we would have won, but even better than that. I mean, that's just embarrassing. 49-3, terrible performance. And then we get to Monday night, dude. And I'm not even gonna lie, I kind of had a rooting interest in this game because I might have put some money on TCU to cover that line. I thought
Really?
Georgia was gonna win, but like plus 13 for TCU, like come on, you got to cover plus 13. This is a national championship we're talking about. We're not talking about some middle of the pack game. This is the number 1 versus the number 3 team in the country, and it's plus 13. TCU was like plus 400 to win the game. What are we watching? Like, what is this line? And everyone's like, oh, just TCU. I'm like, yeah, like why not? I mean, screw it. I thought it was gonna be a high scoring game. It was just not what I expected. And TCU is a national embarrassment, bro. What did they just put on display? That was terrible.
We
You
could
literally
have put the TCU jerseys on and did better
our
than
high
that.
school was bad at football. They could have done that. They could have done that.
They could have scored a touchdown against Georgia.
65-7. People are not talking about this enough. Georgia beat TCU in the college football national championship 65-7.
Let's not forget. Stetson Bennett left with 9.5 minutes left in the game.
National championship. They took out their starting QB because they were up by so much in the national championship game.
And even their backup QB scored points.
And he just kept going. They scored 2 touchdowns with the backup QB, bro, who hadn't played all year because Bennett was playing. And Bennett, dude, he's the same age as Lamar Jackson. Like, this is just it was
older than Justin Herbert.
Game.
Older than Jalen Hurts.
Oh my god, dude.
Older than Brock Purdy.
He's like Joe Burrow's age. I mean, it's just like, dude, what are we doing, dude? It's just college football is in shambles. College football is in total shambles. For them to put the national championship in SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, the biggest game of the year,
the newest stadium,
all the bright lights, all the atmosphere was great. For the teams to be, these are 2 of the quote unquote 2 of the top 4 teams in the country. For that to be that big of a margin, it's insane. Like the level, the playing field is not level at all. And it never in the last 10 years it hasn't been. The college football playoff, I'm gonna say it, the college football playoff has been worse than the BCS era. Because in the BCS era, there actually was some parity. Since the CFP started, Bama wins every year, Georgia wins, and you sprinkle in LSU, you sprinkle in Clemson, you sprinkle in Ohio
Cincinnati.
State. Cincinnati put on a better performance than that.
Precisely.
TCU, I mean, literally, we've seen Notre Dame get absolutely housed in the playoffs. Not as bad as this. Cincinnati get destroyed in the playoffs. Not as bad as this.
Oregon, Ohio State destroyed in playoffs.
They never put in Pac-12 teams ever. They refuse to put in Pac-12 teams.
Oregon's the only one. And I would have loved to see USC.
They had Washington 2016 with Jake Browning, and they lost 28-7 to Alabama. And that Alabama team won the national championship, I think. But It's amazing to me that they refuse to put Pac-12 teams in the playoffs, and every year they put Big 12 teams. What has the Big 12 done in the playoffs?
Nothing. I've yet to see a Big 12
Oklahoma's been
team
there
won the
four
CFP
times,
era.
lost in the semifinal every time. TCU beat Michigan, who again, Michigan, their two appearances, two losses in the semifinal. Overrated Big Ten. And then TCU in the national championship loses 65-7. You could have put, let me just get this clear. And this is not a hyperbole. You put the top six Pac-12 teams. You put Oregon, USC, Oregon State, Washington, UCLA, and I'm forgetting the last one. But you put the top six
Washington
teams in the
State,
Pac and Utah. You
Utah.
put the top six teams in the Pac-12. You put them in that national championship game. I guarantee they do not lose 65-7.
Yep.
Guarantee they don't
Yeah.
lose 65-7. They will not win the game. I am not denying that. But if you want to put on a 65-7 game in the national championship, why even play?
Yeah.
Why even have this? If the national championship is that bad, why even have this work? Even let's look at it. Let's look in the past. Last year, last year was Georgia, Alabama. Okay.
Yep.
It wasn't that great of a game. It was a low scoring game. And the only reason that Georgia won was because the two Alabama wide receivers got hurt. If the two Alabama wide receivers didn't get hurt, they would have won that game. They had Alabama
Yep.
had a ton of injuries, whatever. The year before was LSU, Clemson. LSU was so far the superior team, and they just absolutely they were down by a touchdown, and then they won by like 17 points. Because
Yeah.
that Joe Burrow team was or no, that was the year before. The year after that LSU team,
Yeah.
Mac Jones's Alabama team destroyed Justin Fields and Ohio State, destroyed them like 50-20. Like it just
Mhm.
these games are not even a competition. The only good CFP games finals have been the Clemson Alabama games, and that
Yep.
was when there was Deshaun Watson and crappy
Yep.
Alabama QBs, and then the Tua game against Georgia.
Yep.
Most of these games in the CFP have been terrible games, especially the semifinal games have been terrible games. They're always
Hmm.
mismatches. The only teams that have a chance of winning the championship every year are Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and a few years ago, Clemson and LSU. No
Yep.
one else has a chance. No one else
Yep.
has a chance. So why even have the sport? I honestly, it doesn't make sense. Just have the kids go to the
That's
pros.
that's
It makes
why.
no sense. If you can't tell me with the amount of five-star talent, you can't tell me that Georgia is that much better. Or like this, it shouldn't be the case that a team is that much better.
Yeah.
Why
I
are
mean,
they
it's all
better?
about recruiting too.
It's like there's no equity in college basketball. You never see the same team win over and over again. It just doesn't happen because first of all, it's because it's a crapshoot because it's a 64 team tournament, single elimination, and second of
Yeah.
all, there's more parity. There's more parity every year. College football is a disgrace, total disgrace.
Yep.
For them to put out a game, Georgia, honestly, with if we look back, has not even been the best team in the last. Georgia's team last year was better than this year's team.
Hmm.
LSU was better than them. Alabama was better than them. Or LSU in 2019, Alabama in 2020. Both teams were better than this Georgia team. Georgia 2021 was better than this team. Like, this wasn't even the best Georgia team. And they beat the TCU Horned Frogs 65-7 in the national championship. Like, what are we doing?
Yep.
What are we
I've
doing?
ever
And
ever
and the
since.
quarterback of Georgia is 25. Why
Yeah.
is he in college? The
Exactly.
punter for the punter for TCU is 30. Like
I,
this is not college athletics.
it's all such a business thing now that it's not even a sport anymore. Nobody like the people who are in
All
charge, the
the
committee, all the people who are in charge of the rankings, they literally don't care about the sport whatsoever at all. It is more about how can we bring in the most money? How can we get people to watch the games as much? How can we bring in the
people don't
biggest
want to watch this. I
crowds?
think it doesn't make sense. I don't understand. I don't think anyone besides a Georgia fan or the team that they're playing, like TCU or Michigan or whoever's in the playoff, those fans want to watch the games. Why would anyone else want to watch the games? The semifinals were good games, but it's like it's because the TCU Michigan game was a low level game, and the Ohio State Georgia game was kind of a low level game, but like Ohio State played really well. Georgia played their worst game, like one of their worst games of the year, and Ohio State played great. That's why it was close. But it's like
Yeah.
it's just it's so bad. It's just it's disgraceful. Honest. And then next year,
And
who's gonna win?
again,
Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. One of those three. I can guarantee you go put the money on it. Georgia, Ohio State, or Alabama will win the national championship next year. Guarantee.
yeah.
Lock. There's no one else.
And
Some idiots have FSU ranked number fourth right now. If
that
FSU finishes in
that
the top 15, I will be stunned.
I would be
studs.
shocked.
They
I
were
would,
9-3
and
this
the
year. They were trash. Okay. They barely beat LSU on a freaking doink, whatever, the missed field goal. They should have lost
yeah,
that game. The ACC is atrocious.
exactly.
Atrocious. Clemson
And
got
even
housed by
Clemson didn't
Tennessee,
really
bro.
perform that well.
Clemson's terrible. Klubnik overrated. I mean, genuinely next year, the Pac-12 is going to be the best conference in college football by far.
It was the best conference in college football this year. The
It was the best.
SEC puts up a good
And when
challenge,
we
but there
say,
aren't
and
enough good teams.
when we say the best conference, we don't mean that the team in the Pac-12 is going to win the national championship. What we mean is the competition level is
Is a lot
higher on
better.
average. In the SEC,
Absolutely.
you have two good teams. In the Big Ten, you have two good teams. In all these conferences, you have one or two good teams, and they dominate the competition. In the Pac-12,
Yep.
any team can win any game.
Yep.
I mean, we've seen Cal beat Oregon. We've seen Stanford beat Oregon and UCLA. I mean, we've seen all of that. We see USC lose to Utah all the time. Utah beat other teams. Utah lose to Oregon. Like everything happens in the Pac-12. No game is like people go up to Washington State, you lose there. The Pac-12, there's not the top tier teams, but there's very good teams and there's teams that are sneaky and they can win games. And
Mhm.
for the Pac-12, it's so bad the way that college football is right now. There's no the playing field is not even at all. The disparity between I mean the gap between a mid-tier team like UCLA end of the year 21, the gap between UCLA and Cal, who's a terrible team, is almost smaller than the gap between UCLA and Georgia. I mean,
Mhm.
the gap between middle level teams like UCLA and even like this year, you look Oregon, USC, all these teams, the gap between them and the lower echelon of college football is smaller than the gap between them and like the top two teams because
Yep.
there's no competition. It's not the whole point of sports is to be competitive, and it's not competitive. And TCU is that's embarrassing. Like
Yep.
you, I don't think they're as bad as 65-7, but they're clearly not good enough to compete with Georgia like at all.
Because
They beat
that was
Michigan.
Georgia's
And
best game compared to the Ohio State game. It was a
yeah,
lot better, a lot
yeah,
cleaner, better flow
yeah.
of game. You could tell that Georgia came into that game knowing what they wanted to. I mean, I'm not sure about you, but I heard the Kirby Smart a pregame speech, and
Oh, they wanted it, bro. Like
he got him
they felt
fired
like
up.
disrespected. They want them. Yeah, they felt disrespected. They
That's the
wanted that national
difference.
championship, and they were gonna win that game. It's like it just doesn't make sense to me. Like how they haven't fixed this yet, and they think that expanding the playoff is gonna help. It's not because
It's not.
you're still gonna have the same
It'll be
teams
an
win.
improvement,
It's
but
going to
there
be
are
an
still a
improvement,
lot of other things that we
100%,
can fix.
because it'll even out the recruiting a little bit. But even with their recruiting, Georgia and did not have the number one class this year. Texas A&M had the number one class,
Yeah, and
and
look where Texas A&M are.
they're terrible. And all their players are leaving now. It's not about the recruiting classes. It's that
It's about the
these top tier
transfers.
schools stack year after year after year. They stack transfers. They stack 5 stars. They stack their guys repeatedly over and over and over again. And once you win, you get that reputation, and you continue to go over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it just other teams have no shot. The amount of resources that like Georgia puts in their football program versus other schools is crazy. Like it's really bad. I mean,
I mean,
this
if
is
it
a
was
national
me,
championship.
yeah. If it was me and I was like a 4-star, 5-star wide receiver, running back, quarterback, like whatever. And let's say that I wanted to go to a top tier school like Georgia, right? I wanted to go
Yeah.
there. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the next Stetson Bennett. Maybe not stay there for as long, but just like have the popularity, have the attention drawn to me
Yeah.
as a high level athlete, right? But let's say that Georgia, as I'm coming out of high school, doesn't give me an option to commit to their school, but I have an option from schools like Texas A&M, from schools like Florida State, Clemson, USC, Oregon, UCLA. If it was me, what I would do is I would take my commitment to one of these schools like a Texas A&M, like a Florida State, like an Oregon, like a USC that is definitely a good school but can't compete with a school like Georgia, which is where my goal would want to be. And then I would just get as good as possible at that school and then transfer. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, that's what everyone is doing right now. Transfer
Yeah.
portals weren't a thing a decade ago. Hell, even 5 years
No.
ago, transfer
Now it's
portals
crazy.
weren't that
There's
big of a
no you don't have
deal.
to you don't have to sit out. You can immediately transfer. I mean,
Yeah,
UCLA has got a ton of players on the transfer portal. It's good for the sport in the sense that it becomes more professionalized, but there's no limits. There's no caps. So
Yep.
it's like in professional sports, like this is how I compare it. Professional sports is more of a democracy where like there's actual regulations put in place.
Yeah.
College football is a total dictatorship. The coaches have all the power. They go and recruit. The schools just it's all about the money they pay. The NIL now they can just pay more money.
Hmm.
There's no central body that governs these people.
Yeah.
It's like a free for all. It's a wild west. It just do whatever you want, get whoever you want, no regulations,
Truly.
no
Truly.
cap, and it's bad. I mean, like you look at Georgia, like what does Georgia win national championships in besides football? Barely anything because they
Yeah.
just devote all their
Basketball,
resources into
nothing.
terrible. They
Baseball,
never win.
nothing. I know. I
Nothing.
just I just
Yeah.
met a girl whose brother goes to Georgia and plays baseball at Georgia.
Yeah.
And she's like,
Terrible.
yeah, the reason why he's at Georgia and nowhere else is because Georgia's like the perfect place for him because he's not the
Yeah.
greatest athlete in the world, but he can play ball and he's huge.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, honestly. I don't think college football is ever going to truly be fixed. I mean, you look at programs like Miami have gone to the waste. Nebraska, terrible.
But
You
they're
look at the
but the
Pac-12,
recruiting, God forbid, the recruiting is
yeah,
so good, and people are like,
Miami,
oh, they're gonna be
Miami
so
has the number
good.
one class, and then they're terrible. It's like they're not the number one class, but a top like 10 class, and they're terrible. And like
Yeah,
just these schools that were powerhouses in the past, even you look at Notre Dame, Notre Dame will never win a national championship because they
never.
don't have the talent. They just
And
don't have the
especially now that
talent.
they're in the ACC, it like they screwed themselves over with that. They
Are
were
they
fine in
joining?
the independent. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure they're already there because they used to be
No, I
independent.
think that's for basketball, but
Was it? I'm pretty sure it was
I think
for.
for football for 1 year for 1 year they went to the ACC for football
Was
during
that it?
COVID.
Just the 1 year?
That's it, and then now they're back out. But even now they're playing these teams. They lost to Marshall this year. Like, oh, dude, it's just I don't know. College football is kind of broken. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it because like that game was just it was amazing to me because you watch that game and it's kind of what we said before the game. Everyone was disagreeing with us, but exactly what we said before the game. Georgia is faster,
Yep.
stronger,
Yep.
bigger, more
Hmm.
physical. They execute their game plan better. They make less errors. They have more talent. I mean, they're in every aspect of the game. Georgia was better, better
Absolutely.
coaching,
Yep.
better skill, better
Hmm.
precision, better discipline. Like literally across the board, there's not one thing that TCU did that was better. Not more. They were not. Everyone saying TCU was fast. Georgia was faster. Everyone
Yeah.
saying TCU was tough. No, they not as tough as Georgia. Like there's
Nope.
no aspect that TCU is better than Georgia. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing for college football.
Yeah,
That's not a good
again,
thing.
it just, I'm gonna keep hitting the point about how like college football has turned more into a business than it is a sport now. And
Yeah.
as unfortunate as that is, it is what it is. We have no control over that. Like as fans, we can only say what we want, and majority of the times it doesn't happen. And again,
Doesn't matter.
last
Yeah.
month I was talking about the fact that TCU should not have been the third ranked. And I looked at a team at Alabama, despite the two losses that they had. I looked at a team like Alabama and when if you really want to make it a business decision, then surely, and if you want the views from millions of people around the nation and around the world to be watching this, surely what you would do is you would just sneak Alabama in there just because Alabama, Georgia this year with a two-loss Alabama team. And think about had Alabama beat Georgia, could you imagine the headlines of that?
That would be
Two-loss
crazy.
Alabama went to the
Yeah.
college football playoff, romped on everybody, and beat Georgia after they
Yeah.
won the SEC championship. They just
Crazy.
rewrote the script from last year that Georgia did.
Yeah.
And that's why I
Yeah.
kept on saying it. That
Yeah.
K-State Alabama game proved that Alabama
Yeah.
shouldn't have been written off so early. And now with the TCU Georgia game, it goes to prove even more how underqualified, how so overestimated TCU were, and how
Yeah. Well,
much
I
they
think
did not deserve to be in
yeah.
that game whatsoever. Did not deserve to touch it,
Yeah.
does not deserve to look at it. Just they should have just
Yeah.
stayed in Texas, gone to a bowl game wherever, and played. That
Yeah.
is what should have happened. I stand by that. It should have been
Yeah.
TCU USC because they both lost and went out of the 3 and 4 spot. That's what I would have wanted was a TCU USC bowl game. That's what should
Yeah.
have happened because USC dropped all the way to 10. And now with their loss to Tulane, AP poll has them at like 13.
Yeah.
It
It's
makes
crazy.
no sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I gotta say, I'll just end it on this. I'll just say this. I think that if we're looking back, I think that we saw everyone the final playoff. It was Georgia, number two Michigan, number three TCU, number four Ohio State. I think we saw that even though Michigan beat Ohio State, Ohio State is the only team in the Big Ten that can compete in the college football landscape.
Mhm.
Michigan can't compete, and it's been proven. They lost last year, got destroyed by Georgia. This year they lost to TCU, and
Yep.
that TCU team just got absolutely destroyed by Georgia. So Michigan out of the picture.
They would have been destroyed either
They would
way.
have been
Because I
destroyed by
mean,
Georgia too. And then TCU it was a good win for them to beat Michigan, but they just got absolutely destroyed by Georgia, and that's done. And I think as much as people want to say Alabama did not deserve to make the playoff, which I agree with. I don't think Alabama deserved to make the playoff. But there's a
well,
difference between
I'm not saying that
deserving.
they deserve
There's
to make the
there's
playoffs. I'm just
there's
saying
not a
that, as
there's
a
a difference.
business.
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference between deserving to make the playoff and picking the four best teams. Because
Yes, yeah, I
Alabama
agree.
has a chance when they go up against any team to win. And no matter what
Yeah.
game they play, they have a chance to win.
Hmm.
TCU had no chance, ever, no chance.
Yep.
If Alabama played Georgia, the opening line would be Georgia -5.5, -7, maybe -8.
Yep.
TCU opened up -14.
Yeah.
That's insane.
That's
That's
the
insane.
difference. That's the
You
difference.
can't. I think it solidifies the point in college football right now. There's three teams: Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, that are in contention for the national championship every single year moving forward,
Yep.
and no one else is
Hmm.
in contention. And it's just that's just how it's going to be because
Yep.
Clemson's going downhill, and Michigan is going to go downhill if they lose Harbaugh, and even if they don't lose Harbaugh, they're not in contention. Notre Dame's not
Hmm.
in contention. USC, as good as they are, they're basically the new Oklahoma. They're going to have a good offense, terrible defense. They're not in contention.
Yep.
Colorado got primetime Sanders. They're not going to be in contention because they're not going to have the talent to compete with these teams. No program. You can't tell me one program that's going to be involved. Oregon's not going to be involved. Miami's not going to be involved.
Nope.
They're just not. So LSU, everyone's going to hype up LSU. LSU is the only team that kind of has a chance because they're in the SEC. Brian Kelly is a good coach. If they get talent, they could become like the next Georgia.
And we've
But
seen Jaden Daniels at Arizona State. We've seen that dude
yeah,
play more than anyone else
but he was
compared to all
good.
these
He was
SEC
good at
fans.
Arizona State, but he would never win games. And you look at
Exactly.
him because the team wasn't good enough around. If he goes to LSU, they win a ton of games because the talent that they
It's the
have around him is
resources
crazy.
around him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
that's
all
it.
and yeah, because Jaden Daniels is a good quarterback, but like he couldn't win games in the Pac-12. He had that
Yeah.
one big game against Oregon that knocked him out of the playoff, but that was it. So it just yeah, I think that's there's nothing else really to say at this point. There's nothing else to
Yeah.
say.
I mean, the college football season this year, definitely some interesting points, definitely some, key moments, some, memorable moments, but I just feel like overall the ending of it all and, the last game of the season that we got was just very disappointing.
Yeah,
And as a college football fan and as a like extravagant college football fan, I just
it was
feel
disappointing. It was a
I feel
disappointing end.
exhausted and disappointed.
Yeah, yeah.
I you
Time
know
to move on to the NFL, to soccer,
yeah
to baseball. I can't. March Madness is gonna be crazy. Like it's just
yeah
college football is kind of like this every year. Every year is the same thing.
a team is like expected to win the championship, and
Yeah,
they do by
and
a
they do.
pretty large
Yeah,
margin, and
yeah.
that's what it is.
So
And because
yeah,
and that is primarily happens because every single time it's always a business decision. You'll have
yeah.
the teams like Ohio State, like Georgia. I can't really say like Michigan because Michigan is so on again, off again, but like Alabama in the
Is
college
it? It's
football
just those three:
playoffs,
Alabama, Georgia, Ohio
Georgia.
State every year. And
Yep.
Ohio State's only won one CFP, and
Yeah.
Ohio
And
State has literally won one CFP. So it's
think
right
about it.
now.
There's
It's
always that
basically
there's
this.
always that one team that's just like the odd
Yeah,
one out. It was TCU
yeah,
this year, it was
yeah,
Cincinnati, it was Oklahoma, all these teams that you knew you're like, why?
yeah.
Why?
FSU the first year. Yeah, it just
Yeah.
some of those. Yeah,
You
it is.
know?
But you can't. There's nothing they can do because they have to put four teams in the playoff.
Yep.
And once we expand, all it's gonna be the same thing. It's gonna be 12 teams, two teams that can win the championship, 10 teams that are just playing just to play. And
Mhm.
then those two teams are gonna win the games. There's never gonna be upsets because they play at home and you're not gonna like if anyone thinks that Oregon is gonna go to Georgia and win in Georgia in like the
Yeah,
round of 8 game, they're crazy. They're crazy.
exactly. Yeah.
No one's doing that. You're not
You
going to
know,
Georgia and winning. Alabama's not going to Georgia and winning. And also the problem is that the SEC has such a fluke schedule and they set those teams up to succeed so well.
yeah.
Georgia and Alabama never play ever
Georgia's
in the regular
Georgia's
season.
schedule next year is
Cupcake
ridiculously
schedule.
easy.
I mean, and they always have high like strength of schedules like in the rankings, but they don't play anyone. I don't know how they make these statistics because their strength of schedule literally should be dead last. I mean, they didn't play anyone.
I watched
Like
Alabama play
UCLA's
Austin
first
Peay,
three
the
games are
ultimate
harder. Yeah,
penultimate game
yeah.
of the season. It's
That
like,
thing.
when does Oregon get to
Yeah,
play a team like
yeah.
Austin Peay? It's like
Dude,
that's one of our first
why
three
can't we play
games.
Hawaii in the 11th game? Like, why can't we play Hawaii before USC? Like, they get to rest
Exactly.
before their big
Oh
game.
my God. Yeah,
Lights out, baby.
exactly. Lights out.
Oh,
Yeah, like, yeah, I
it's
mean,
bad.
it's ridiculous, but college football season, it definitely, I've seen better seasons. This was
Yeah.
probably the worst one in a while. I can't say it's the worst
It was
one
a
ever.
disappointing end,
It
but
was
it's a wrap.
definitely
It's a wrap.
disappointing.
Yeah,
It is what it is, but
yeah,
we'll be back in the next episode. Again, we've
yeah.
been getting a lot of attention on our social media, so make sure to go follow them: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter at Dubs Only Sports. And then if you don't just want to watch the clips, you want to watch the full episode, see everything we have to say, make sure you watch us on YouTube and you watch us on Spotify. You can just find us by putting in the search bar Dubs Only Sports. Yeah, that's gonna do it for episode 14. We're constantly uploading, so you don't have to be worried about it. Dylan's back in college, as you may be able to see. He's got a change in scenery. He's back in the dorm room. I am community college student, so I don't have to go anywhere, and I still have a month off, so hey. But yeah,
We're
that's
still
gonna do
gonna
it for
get those
us.
videos out for you guys. We're still gonna get those videos out
We're
for
gonna
you
get them
guys.
out with our busy
We're not
schedules. We're
gonna
still
stop.
getting them out.
We're still gonna get them out. We're still gonna give you that content, some NFL content. In the future, we're gonna have some Champions League content coming out in early
March
February to
Madness is
predict.
coming up
March
too.
Madness is coming up. There's a lot of stuff coming up, so just stay patient, guys. We're gonna have a lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll just see you in the next one, guys. Peace out.
Peace out.